Hello and good evening. This is one of the constituent components of the recently posted 5 race cars that never got off the ground video, posted separately for largely research purposes to determine which car gets a deeper dive video in the future. Enjoy! And for our 5th and final car. Almost. It's another car that was shrouded in rumor and mystery for far longer than it was ever in development. It's Porsche's Le Mans prototype for the new millennium, the LMP2000, or, if you prefer the internal designation, the 9R3. It's not a very good name, is it? I mean, LMP2000 sounds pretty good, but 9R3 sounds a bit dull. There are a few disparate components that contribute to the LMP2000 story, as the car was in some ways a bit of a hodgepodge rather than a nice, smooth, linear start-to-end project. The oldest component for the car was actually its engine, based on a 1993 design for the Footwork Formula One team. The design, a 3.5-liter V10, had been rather unsuccessful to say the least, with the team canning the contract with Porsche halfway through the season after numerous issues with the engine, but Porsche continued to fiddle with the design as a side project after the fact, before putting it on a shelf for the rest of the decade. The chassis, on the other hand, was started later but largely finished earlier. Porsche acknowledged that their victory with the Dower 962 in 1994 had been something of a lucky win from a regulations standpoint, one that would not be easily repeatable, and they retained Wiet Huidekoper following that victory to assist in the development of the upcoming GT1 alongside long-standing Porsche veteran designer and engineer Norbert Singer. With Huidekoper, which is fun to say, but I am sure I'm saying it wrong, promoted to lead the Motorsports Design Bureau in 1997, work then commenced on a replacement for the GT1 as well, since that loophole, too, had something of an obvious expiration date, with the future clearly to be found in a true, purpose-built Le Mans prototype that actually complied with that rule set, rather than the definitely not a prototype gov that the GT1 was. Huidekoper and Singer continued their collaboration, with the former focused on mechanical design and production, while Singer did aero and performance for the new LMP, originally intended for debut in 1999. Most of the initial design and testing was done with CAD software, something that had only really found favor at Porsche by Huidekoper's insistence, although scale models were constructed for wind tunnel testing. The chassis and bodywork were designed internally and then sent to Lola Composites for construction out of carbon fiber, and componentry was carried over with modifications, or reused outright, from the outgoing GT1 wherever possible, including the suspension design and flat-six engine.
But then we hit a roadblock. The great library of Alexandria in Egypt is burned,
revealing that the 911-derived flat-sixes that had been Porsche's competition backbone for the past 20 years was really at the end of its useful competition life in its current format, at least for prototype racing, as it was, just too heavy and underpowered. I mean, they'd only been using it since the early 70s, so, no, late 70s? Mid-70s? Somewhere in the 70s. So, 20 years out of any engine is excellent. However, convincing Porsche of this was, perhaps unsurprisingly difficult. They're not really good at doing change. It wasn't until Huidekoper started making comparisons to their potential Le Mans competitors that the Porsche executives came to their senses and cancelled the LMP 1999 project. Several months later, however, Huidekoper was back at Wiesach and asked his opinion on the suitability of the old Formula One power plant for endurance applications. This much newer and shinier engine was decidedly a better choice, and the project resumed with a new target debut of the Space Year 2000. The 1999 carbon fiber chassis was largely retained as originally designed, though now the V10 served as a fully stressed member, a feature of which the Boxer 6 would have been incapable, mated to a 6-speed sequential manual transmission, and the engine had been modified to enhance its reliability, including an increase in displacement to between 5 and 5.5 liters, pending final engineering decisions. And then, unfortunately, the corporate decision was made to cancel the project yet again, this time not for engineering reasons, but rather for, never clearly elocuted, probably political ones. Porsche was inching ever closer to its current bizarre ownership and subsidiary ship of Volkswagen Gruppe, To the keyboard warriors, yes, I do actually understand the nature of the relationship, but this isn't the appropriate venue for that messy web of ownership and subordinateship. And they were in the process of trying to ride along in the development of the Volkswagen Touareg and Audi Q7 in pursuit of the vehicle that would yield Porsche's financial salvation, the Cayenne. But VW was taking their first stab at Le Mans that year with the R8R and R8C and planning a more concerted effort for the new millennium based on their learnings from the two 1999 attempts. Competition from the winningest Le Mans manufacturer of all time would hardly make their job easier, and so allegedly a deal was reached between Ferdinand Piëch of Volkswagen Gruppe, then formerly of Porsche, and Wendelin Wiedeken to cooperate on the big SUV project in exchange for Porsche pumping the brakes on any Le Mans prototype work for a decade, including the LMP2000. 2 chassis had been completed at that point, with one well progressed towards full assembly, and the Porsche board did allow funds sufficient for that one car to be completed. Presumably the second chassis was destroyed, after which it had a single testing weekend at Wiesack under the helmsmanship of the now late great Bob Wallach and the Flying Scotsman Alan McNish. Both reported favorably on the car's potential, but of course that didn't make much odds compared to the will of the board, and so the one completed car was straight back into the storage shed, with all those involved actually ordered to deny the car ever existed for well over a decade. The engine did get a second, or perhaps more appropriately third and fourth lease on life in the Carrera GT road car, pretty much as designed for the LMP2000, and in the RS Spider LMP2, less 2 cylinders. Actually, that would also give it a fifth lease on life in the current 963, but it wasn't until 2018 that the car was first revealed to the public at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, after which it underwent further restoration and ran in October of last year, 2024, still driven by Alan McNish. Had the project gone ahead as built in 2000, no doubt the first decade of the new millennia would have been much more interesting at Le Mans. Actually, it's possible, and I'm going to engage in extreme hypothetical with a lot of, butterfly effects here, that having a consistent competitor like Porsche may actually have extended the lifespan of the R8 simply because it wouldn't have been quite so dominant, and thus the regulatory bodies wouldn't have tried to hobble it into obsolescence in the way that it historically did. Alternately, the R10 may have come out earlier, but still have been powered with a petrol-powered engine rather than going for diesel. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.